Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 216. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. I would venture a guess that almost 90% of the clutter in your home right now is caused by you saying these four phrases to yourself. Oh my goodness. You're like, what are they? Am I saying them? Probably because they represent the major types of clutter that we deal with as overwhelmed moms. So I'm going to share what those phrases are and then also what we can do about it if you find yourself saying them. So, what do you say? Grab the notebook and pen and let's dive into today's episode. Okay, well, before we jump in, I just want to let everyone know that if you weren't aware, I do have in-person decluttering and organizing services in the Northern Virginia area. I would love to come into your home and work with you. But if you are not my neighbor and that's not a possibility, I do have a couple of options for you, including something I've been testing out, which is a virtual coaching option where we use Voxer, which is a walkie-talkie app, for 3 weeks. And you can send me videos, you can send me photos of different areas in your home, and I can actually walk you through my transform method and help you in the space, even though I'm not physically there. So the price is $97 for that 3 weeks of support. And really, it's a back and forth conversation. I ask that you can commit about 10 to 15 minutes per day. Probably not the weekends, but definitely on the days that you are able to commit. And so if you're interested in learning more, you can just go ahead and email me at info@simplebyemmy.com so you can learn more. Okay, are you ready to find out what these phrases are? I bet you are. And no judgment if you say these, because we've all said it more than once in our lives. Okay, the first phrase is, I'll get to it. What? Later. Later. Yes. How many times do we say that? I'll get to it later. Or do we think it? And that's one of the reasons why surface clutter is such a big issue, because clutter at its core is unmade decisions and delayed decisions. So anytime something doesn't end up in its permanent home, we're saying, oh, I'll put that away later. Oh, I'll take care of that later. So later is the enemy of a clutter-free home. Also, we have this when it comes to projects or aspirational projects, which we'll talk a lot about in this episode, is the aspirational nature of clutter. And it's like, oh, well, I'll get to that project later. And understandably, we're busy moms, so it may not be able to be that we can do everything right now. But how do we deal with this? Okay, so there is a concept in professional organizing called Ohio. Ohio stands for only handle it once, or like a one-touch concept. So let's use paper as an example, since I find that a lot of surface clutter ends up being paper, like receipts, and just kind of this random assortment of things that we're going to get to quote unquote later. So let's say that you go to the mailbox and your kids are also coming home from school and there's a bunch of paper coming in. What do we do? Well, you want to make sure that you have a place for it to go, and the place for it to go is not all over the countertops and all over the floors. So I have a physical inbox in my kitchen. That's where everything is sort of corralled. I go through the mail immediately, only handle it once, right? And that way I know what's junk, what goes to my husband, what requires action from me. And I may not be able to pay the bill or scan the document right away, but I know that that inbox is where everything lives. Similarly, when my kids have papers coming home about the upcoming events at the school, or perhaps they have a reading log where they have to write down what they've read every day, that is going in the inbox too, because that will require a conversation with them. Then I know, because I have systems to support my home, and that's something we talk a lot about on the podcast, and I can also help help you with that if we work one-on-one. But one of my systems is that at the end of the day, I'm reviewing what goes into the inbox and seeing what action it requires. Does it require me to put something on my calendar? Does it require me to scan it? Does it require me to pay a bill? So that's just one example of being able to just sort of make sure that it has a home to go to. I was just working with a client and there was a lot, when we went through her home, there was a lot of like loose change around. So maybe there's just one particular corralling spot for the loose change. And every time you come in, the loose change goes in there. When it's full, you either go to your local grocery store and do the Coinstar, or you put it in a different kind of container. But it's not that it is everywhere. Oh, I'm just going to get to that later. I'll figure that out later. So later is a biggie. If you find yourself saying later, make sure that things have homes, and then also you're developing a process or a system around those items. Okay? All right. Now we're moving on to phrase number 2. I'll use it someday. Someday, in this aspirational future where we have all the time and energy in the world. Wouldn't that be nice? And don't you ever find yourself in different seasons of motherhood saying, when the kids are older, when the kids are older, when the kids are older. And now my kids are old enough that they are fairly independent. And then usually we come up with a different aspirational future. Oh, I'm working on my business. So when I have more time and I'm not working on my business, there's always going to be an aspirational future. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, that we want something better for ourselves. But the problem is it causes us to keep things that we don't need because we are convincing ourselves of this aspirational future that probably is not very likely. So I'm going to give you an example from my own life. I used to own a ton of dresses. I had a bit of a dress addiction. I would go online, mostly on ModCloth, and I would peruse all the dresses, and I would think of myself going on, dates or going to picnics, which I never do, wearing these really nice dresses. And then when I became a stay-at-home mom, I had really no opportunity to be wearing these dresses all the time. So I did pare down quite a bit, but there was this one particular dress that I held on to for a long time. First of all, it didn't really fit me. Second of all, it was really more fancy than I would wear for anything. And yet I held on to it because it was one of my very favorites. Then I put it on ThreadUp thinking, oh, this is probably going to sell. It didn't sell. And then I had the opportunity to make the decision, do I want to have it sent back to me? Oof. That was tough because it was something that was hard for me to let go of. And then it was like, the app was like, oh, do you want it back? Yes, but no. So that was really tough for me, but I had to really understand the aspirational nature of that. And it's okay to let something like that go. It served its purpose in the season that it worked for me. But now it's okay. I don't need that to be taking up the emotional space, the physical space. So what do we do when we say, I'll use it someday? Well, we want to use our favorite tool, the out of sight, out of mind bin. And we want to make sure that it has a deadline on it. Okay, so for a crafting project, I'll do that someday. Well, let's put some language around someday. Let's say if I don't use this crafting project, or I don't complete it or start working on it or something in 6 months, then I'm going to let it go. And in the out of sight, out of mind bin, we're going to make sure that we have a sticky note on it with the date and put the reminder in our phone. This is really, really important because we're so busy, and that way we really can at that time reassess and be like, okay, it's been a while. I haven't even thought about it, let alone have I touched it. Is it time for me to let this go? All right, so that second phrase, I'll use it someday. Okay, phrase number 3 is similar, but slightly different. I'm going to keep this just in case. Okay, so aspirational is someday, right? The future, an aspirational future. Just in case is more of this fear-based scarcity sort of mindset. What if I need it, right? What if I need it? And sometimes it can be aspirational because you're coming up with reasons like there might be I don't know, an earthquake or something like that. It might be like something that might potentially happen. But a lot of times when we say just in case, it's based upon this fear that we're not going to be prepared. Okay. And I'm not saying that that is bad, because our minds and bodies are designed to keep us safe. So when we are saying, oh, I'm worried that something might happen, that's really a mechanism of our minds and bodies for that safety purpose. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But the problem is, we're not, as you might hear when people are talking about like chronic stress, we're not being chased by saber-toothed tigers, right? So a lot of these mechanisms that were designed to keep us safe aren't really necessary when it comes to holding on to some of these things that we no longer need to hold on to. One of the examples that I think is very common, I just thought of two examples actually, but more common for our male counterparts, shall I say, tools and cords. Oh my goodness, cords. Okay, well, let's start with tools, right? So let's say that there's a tool that it's like you're never really going to use, but you could use it. So, okay, well, let's keep it just in case I have to do a woodworking project or something like that. I know nothing about tools, but just asking yourself some questions, okay? Is it worth taking up the space in my home? A lot of times tools can take up a ton of space, or, depending on what they are. Do I want it to be taking up the energy to manage it, or the time to be able to find it and know what I have? But one of the other things that might be helpful is using the move out method, which I talked about in a previous episode, which is asking yourself, if I were to move, would I pack it? Would I take the time to bubble wrap it and to make sure that it was like well packed? Is that even worth it to me? And finally, the minimalists have something called the 20-20 rule, which is if it's $20 or less, or you can get it within, 20 minutes from where you are, then consider letting it go if it's not something that you have used for a while. So those are good examples. Let's go to cords now. Again, this is on the fly. I just thought of this, but I was with a client, actually most of my clients, they have the random box of cords. And usually, sorry for the guys if you're listening, usually it's the husbands that want to keep all the cords. Why? Well, just in case there's this electronic that I might need to charge. Okay, and yet you have this humongous bin of a ton of cords. That's probably not helpful to you, because even if you needed to charge said thing, you wouldn't even know where to go. So part of that would be, okay, let's take away that fear and scarcity mindset of, oh my gosh, if I needed to charge something. Well, chargers are inexpensive for the most part, and we need to kind of do an electronics audit to understand what we have, because for the most part, most of the cords probably are for things that you don't even have anymore. So you need to be able to understand what you have, what it requires as far as like the USBs and all that kind of thing. And again, if that's something that you're struggling with and you want to talk about it, we can do a virtual session together so that you can get through the crazy box of cords. But that's just an example of what we're keeping out of fear and that scarcity mindset, but it's taking up a ton of space physically, but also that mental space. Like, okay, my Kindle's dead. Where's my cord? Oh, I have to look in this humongous box of cords in order to find it. That's no fun for anyone, right? Okay, so we went through number 1, 2, 3. I'll get to it later. I'll use it someday, and I'll keep it just in case. All right, the last one is a biggie. It's a biggie because it's the hardest type of stuff that we deal with, which are gifts and sentimental clutter. And the question is, what if? What if? What if this person, it would be mad if I gave it away? What if my kids are going to want this? Okay. Again, oh, sorry. I get so excited. I start moving my hands and bumping my elbow. So just thinking about this comes from a good place. All of these things come from a good place. And the what if is that we want to make sure we are not hurting anyone's feelings. We want to make sure that no one is disappointed in a decision that we've made. And for me, fear of disappointment or disappointing others has been huge in my life. So I totally understand this. But a lot of times this shows up as, okay, for example, most of the women that I know, regardless of their age, have kept their wedding dress. Okay. Now, why have they kept their wedding dress? Well, it might be that they think that they just should keep their wedding dress. Perhaps they have a daughter or more than one daughter, and they think, oh, well, they might want this wedding dress someday. And so if the person that you are intending this item for is alive and well, then it might be worth, depending on their age, to have a conversation with them about what they think about the item, because you might be surprised one way or the other. You might be surprised that they don't want it, and you might be surprised that they want it. But regardless, this is a conversation that we can have now instead of just assuming, oh, they might want that perhaps someday. Depending on their age, again, have a conversation. And if they're too young, then go ahead and use that out of sight, out of mind bin with a deadline, instead of just, oh, I'm not sure, and then we're just holding on to it for no reason. So that's more the, okay, what if this person is going to want it? The other side of that with gifts, like let's say, for example, or family heirlooms. Let's say you have your grandmother's china. Your grandmother has passed away. And so you tell yourself, oh, I can't get rid of my grandmother's china because it belonged to her. And we equate having things from our loved ones as evidence that we love them. And that's not the case. Because I want you in those cases, if the person is no longer living, I want you to imagine that you're having a conversation with that deceased relative. They come over to your house, they sit down, and they say, Emily, how's it going? Oh, it's going pretty well. Except I've been really stressed out lately. And I think it's because of all the stuff that I have, in my home. I just have so much stuff. And so, you're kind of talking. And yeah, I mean, we have our everyday dishes. We don't really entertain very much. And we have the china from you, and it's a lovely pattern. And I know it's so beautiful. But Grandma, we just really don't use china. That's just kind of not what our generation does. And imagine what your grandma would say. Would your grandma say, Emily, I'm very disappointed in you. Why aren't you using my china? No, of course not. They love you, and they'd say, oh, I totally understand. If this is too much for you, if this is stressing you out, if this isn't your style, then please pass it along to someone that can use it. Your loved ones do not want you to be keeping stuff that's stressing you out. And if they do, then that's kind of messed up. And that's a whole other episode. So just remembering that your loved ones want you to be happy, and you do not need to keep getting gifts out of guilt. None of it. Okay? Once it's been given to you, that was the expression of love. What you decide to do after it is your decision. Well, now I'm just getting all riled up. Okay, so we're going to just review these 4 phrases. And again, if any of this sounds like you, no judgment. This is all about awareness and knowing, okay, I find myself saying this a lot. What are some things that I can do to remedy this and to think about it in a different way? And you can come into the free Facebook group if you're struggling with anything in particular. We can talk through it. And the link for that is tinyurl.com/moms overcoming overwhelm. I'm happy to talk through that with you. Or if you want a little bit more support, again, I do in-home services in Northern Virginia. Otherwise, why don't you contact me about doing that virtual session where we're kind of talking back and forth for 3 weeks, and you can just email me at info@simplebyemmy.com. Okay, so one more time, these 4 phrases. I'll get to it later. I'll use it someday. I'll keep it just in case. And the last, what if? Ooh, yes, a biggie. All right. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. Again, you can tell I get very passionate when it comes to the questions we ask ourselves, because it's really important so we can release that burden and guilt and be able to enjoy the life that we deserve, living in a clutter-free space. And you deserve it, and I am here to support you every step of the way. So I will see you next week, okay? Bye for now.